Hello, my name is Kai, and today we're going to be talking about Liverpool's game against Crystal Palace in the Community Shield. But before I get into it, it would be great if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter and Instagram. But anyway, let's get right into the analysis. So to begin, we're just going to look at the general build-up shape of this game. We're seeing a lot of the same trends that we've seen over the past few games throughout all of preseason. We're still seeing the development of a 3-2-5, although it's much more fluid, and I think part of that has to do with how Palace set up in the 3-4-3, but part of it I think is still Arne trying to figure out what the best way to execute this shape could be. So to begin here, we can see that we have Ibrahim Konate on the ball. Curtis Jones ends up dropping in to form the back three. This is the first thing that's pretty important because Milos Kerkez is still here because of how dynamic this is, and I talked about this in my first video. The 10 has to drop in to form the double pivot. We have the right back getting ready to go, the left back getting ready to go. That's effectively the initial setup. We see that Curtis ends up distributing the ball out to Kerkez, feeds it back to Verge. We progress further up the pitch. We see the semblance of this lopsided pivot with Dom going out wide. You'd expect this to be the 6, but because Curtis dropped, Vert's dropped, and Kerkez is in the midst of driving forward, we see the ball eventually get recycled back to Curtis, to Dom, to Verge. We're going to see a lot of deep progression this season. In this case, we're seeing Verge smack the ball all the way over to Mo, ends up receiving the ball. If you can imagine a world where we had somebody like Adam Wharton in our midfield, you could see him doing something like that from potentially the left-hand side of a back three. The ball ends up getting to Mo. He distributes it back to Jeremy Frimpong, who then distributes it back to Ibu. But here you can kind of see the similar build-up principles that we saw throughout preseason. But if we were to actually visualize what this looks like on the pitch, I think this is effectively what we're going to see. We're going to see Dominic Szoboszlai out on the left-hand side. You have Milos Kerkez there, narrow. Gakpo kind of resigned. Salah high, sometimes inside with Frimpong on the outside, but in this case, Frimpong was doing the underlapping. This is effectively what that initial sequence looked like for Liverpool. I think you could easily replace Jones with Gravenberch, although Grav might not be as good in that position, and I think you could even put Alexis where Sabo is. But again, I think this is still vaguely the 3-2-5, it's just that the fullbacks didn't necessarily fly forward yet, so we're still trying to figure out how to build up without an elite deep progressor or first receiver, which is going to be a real challenge for Slot this season. But let's continue forward and look at the next panels. So in the next scenario, we're looking at the build up to Hugo Ekitike's goal. We start with Milos Kerkez having the ability to drive forward, Jeremy Frimpong on the overlap this time, Mo trying to come inside, Florian Wirtz on this left-hand side. We have our double pivot, we have our back line. We end up getting the ball forward. It ends up getting to Cody Gakpo, who his technical level was really shown in this game, that he probably doesn't have the same link-up potential. But he wanted to cut inside, he basically couldn't, so he ends up getting on the outside and getting ready to distribute the ball to Wirtz, who could then find somebody like Milos Kerkez or Hugo Ekitike, who have gone beyond. Wirtz ends up getting this nice little ball over to Hugo Ekitike, who's able to kind of do this peeling off channel run to the outside. Ekitike picks up the ball. Ekitike gets into a good position where he's able to flick the ball back to Florian Wirtz, who then in turn gives it back to Ekitike immediately. You have Cody inside. Again, you could imagine Isak here and having these two constantly swapping positions. Mo's inside, which this is the position you would want Mo inside. Jeremy Frimpong here. Dom here, who could potentially whip the ball in. But you get Hugo Ekitike creating separation, looking to potentially roll the ball into the bottom corner. He ends up creating that separation, and we know that Hugo can't hit the ball really hard, but we do know that Hugo is a decent finisher. He's not elite, but there are certain things that he can do well, and this was a good example of that. Now, there's not much to really demonstrate in terms of analysis in the final third, but things I thought were interesting was both wingers coming inside in these situations, Wirtz leaning to his natural inclination to be in that left half space, saw Kerkez being able to drive through the thirds, we saw Dom being able to drift wide, Curtis knowing to arrive in the end and be in the edge of the box like he is here, Jeremy Frimpong in a good isolated position. I think whoever's in this furthest right-hand side is the one who's going to get isolated more. And I think if you want to keep Cody Gakpo as your starting winger, we should flip the script so that he's isolated more, so that he can cut inside and shoot immediately instead of having to link up play as much as he had to in this game. I really wanted to show this sequence. It's not really a sequence, it's really just one panel. And the reason I wanted to show it is look at how insanely high our line is. I'm terrified of this because if Mateta was here, he'd still be onside. If he was further forward, he'd still be onside. We effectively only have 2 players in this final block who are defending because ultimately we end in the 2-2-6, which means that we're going to just have 2 of our center backs are both players in the pivot back. And in this case, Dom's inclination is to go forward. So realistically, in this game, it was only 3 players back. And as defensively sound Curtis can be, having 3 players defending is not a very good way of dealing with counterattacks. It's almost suicide. And that's one of the reasons we were completely ran through in this game. I think if you had the likes of a McAllister or even Gravenberch, they would have a more natural inclination to be further back than Dom, and that's something Dom's really going to have to reckon with in the pivot this season. This sequence doesn't really lead to anything, but it's again showing our build-up and also mainly our pressing. So here we kind of have this 4-man block press where you have our left-sided central midfielder, our 10, our right winger, and our striker. I immediately want to look at this in the analysis board because I think that this was very interesting, and I know why it happened. Initially, when I was tweeting about it, I was a little confused as to why we were doing it, because to me, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. But I think it's just because of Palace's formation, the 3-4-3, and Daniel Munoz was pinning our winger back, which is why Cody Gakpo was effectively playing a left wing back at times. I think it's because of this. Munoz would be here, so Cody had to be pinned back. Of course, Jeremy Frimpong goes back into his right back position. Jones is here. With a little bit of this happening, Kirkes is creating a little bit of space because Ismail Assar isn't pushing on the last line immediately all the time. And because of how we have to press, we kind of get this weird block where Wirtz goes here, Dom pushes up higher here, Ekitike here, and Salah here to press instead. It's weird. It still kind of is a 4-2-4, but it was more situational to deal with this like narrow back 3 and these flying wing backs. I think that's effectively why Liverpool pressed like that this game. And it's nice to see that this probably won't be implemented in every single game. You could expect that. But it is cool to see that Arne is adapting the press depending on the team that we're playing. And it's definitely something I'm interested in looking at as we play other teams throughout the season. And it also shows that we're moving away from a rigid 4-2-4 or 4-4-2 press. So here we are back in that pressing situation. We can see that we're kind of employing the soft press against Palace. I think that's because they're an elite counter-attacking side and they have players like Wharton where if we do press him and we commit a lot of bodies forward, he's going to get the ball and he's going to pass it forward or in behind. Keep getting pressing scenarios. Inevitably, this leads to them going long and Ibu winning the ball. We distribute it out to Wirtz. Wirtz gets it to Salah, back to Wirtz, through to Frimpong in behind on the overlap. We get Salah being able to get the ball in behind to Hugo Ekitike, who tries to flick it and it fails. But again, the link-up play is good, the potential counterattacks, mini transitions. A lot of these things are going very well for Liverpool. Most of the struggle is our initial build-up, which we're really struggling in, and our dealing with counter, and our rest defense is really struggling at the moment, which you could see with both goals. Here's an example of us counterattacking again. Mo wins the ball from Adam Wharton, pushes up to Cody Gakpo. Gakpo attempts to pass in behind, but I really liked seeing the players who are going forward. We have Hugo here. We have Dom rushing forward, Mo, Wirtz, Frimpong. We could definitely be very deadly in the counterattack, and honestly, I wouldn't really hate the idea of, instead of playing Cody where he's playing, which is him as the left winger, you instead play Dom out here with Flo. Let's get rid of Jones. Eventually, you'd maybe do something like this. I wouldn't actually hate this, because then we know Dom can do these passes in behind. This is, of course, the dynamic on the left-hand side of the Hungarian national team. So they definitely have good chemistry together, and Dom's natural inclination is to drift onto the left, enables Kirkes to go in underlapping runs, gives us more defensive stability on the left-hand side if Kirkes overcommits, more technical security here. Of course, it would require Ryan to be really defensive and not push forward so that Salah and Frimpong can fly, but effectively that's what we've been doing preseason anyway, and maybe this would be the best way to get all 4 of these guys in here. Potential for a box midfield, which I always love. Wouldn't necessarily be the worst idea to play Dom left wing. And that's of course assuming that you don't sign somebody like Bradley Barcola. I definitely do see the vision in it. This is another counterattack that I really liked from Liverpool. Jeremy Frimpong wins the ball back, passes it forward to Hugo Ekitike, who does this absolutely insane flick to Florian Wirtz in space, who then looks to immediately pass it to Mo Salah, which we see develop here. Flo kind of messes up this ball. He passes it like this, which forces Mo to go wide. If he passed it more straight, Mo probably takes this inside and scores. Again, these are little problems that will get fixed with time. Mo inevitably gets the ball inside, gets it to Flo. Cody looks to shoot and kind of scuffs it again. And another really great chance that we generated. We created a lot of good chances in this game. I just think that we could do better still. The link up still needs to improve, and we need to readjust how we're using our left winger in Cody Gakpo. Not to blame him. I mean, Cody's really good at the cutting inside and shooting gimmick or the going to the byline and crossing. But we need players who are able to link up better. And if Cody can develop that, that's great. Otherwise, we need to look for either some internal solutions like Dom or external like Barcola or Rodrigo. Okay, so let's look at the next panel. The reason I wanted to show this one is we're still doing the very classical 3-2-5 at times. I mean, Jeremy Frimpong started deeper a lot more. I just think that's a tweak that Slot chose to make, but ultimately he was still kind of just driving forward in the way that you would expect him to. We see the 3-2-5 here, Verge in the center, and I prefer just to be in the center. Of course, I'd prefer someone like Wharton in Kirkes's position, but that's besides the point. Kirkes is there. It's the same thing that we've seen before, just showing continuity. So here is another situation. I believe this is Jeremy Frimpong's goal. We see Kirkes driving, sort of another counterattack scenario. Again, it's kind of problematic to me that a lot of our great buildup is coming from things that are counterattacks, but ultimately I think our actual buildup will improve with time. Get the ball back to Dom. Dom is able to do some great deep build-up, great Wharton impression, great Trent impression to find Jeremy Frimpong in space, get it to Frimpong. Frimpong accelerates right past Tyreek Mitchell, whips the ball into the box, and it ends up going in because Dean Henderson isn't the tallest goalkeeper. It's still a very dangerous ball. Realistically, I think someone like Ekitike or Gakpo should have been at the back post. More specifically, Gakpo. He's good at this. He should have run in faster to get in behind. But still a good goal. Freakish goal, but a good goal nonetheless. Another example of our 3-2-5, except this time you can sort of see the lopsided pivot that I was talking about for a while now. We have a lot of different options and variations in build-up that we could try this season. That's one of them. I do prefer this lopsided pivot when we are playing with Dom in the team. I much prefer this to occur when Dom is in the team. It allows Flo to drop, Ekitike to drop, Salah to drop. If Salah's out wide, Frimpong can be here. And if this is Bradley, this is a really good position for Connor Bradley because he profiles pretty similarly to like right-sided 8. But yeah, this would be my ideal build-up for when Dom is in the team, for sure. Also isolates him better for these long diags to Mo or Jeremy Frimpong. Look at another build-up scenario. This time we have Milos Kirkes starting out on the ball, distributes it out to Dom. Dom once again finds Florian Wirtz, who gets a lot of play on the left here. We get this build-up inside. It ends up getting to Cody, who again doesn't really read the game well enough because he immediately tries to thread it in behind for Milos Kirkes, who can't get there. Realistically, he should look to stop this and then find Kirkes or find Ekitike or Mo. Maybe even finding Frimpong with a very flat, curved ball like this. But a little bit too eager. But showing some good link-up play, and I like that we're overloading the left-hand side. I just think if we're going to do this, I would prefer if Frimpong is the in-behind threat where Mo is, and Mo is in the wider position so that Mo can kind of play make. Because Mo doesn't really get a lot of touches when he's not the focal point, and he's high and narrow. If you want to make him the focal point, that's fine, but then why do you have a 6'4", or 6'3", however tall Ekitike is, striker in your team, you know? That's what he should be doing, knocking the ball down. Not like a target man, but just as a out ball in build-up. Here's another example. This time we kind of had Verts dropping into this conductor role. We have a lot of our players really narrow here. Verts picks up the ball, he turns, looks to progress by getting it to Dom, and we kind of get this cute little 1-2 where Verts is in space and he has 3 attackers in front of him, pulls up forward, nothing ends up happening, tries to get the ball forward, he ends up getting it to Hugo, who drops. Hugo then looks to find Flo again, but it ultimately fails. Again, good link up. I like that both Flo and Ekatike drop in. We know that Florian Wirtz can play as a second striker and go on the last line, so if one drops, one goes forward. Dom occupies the space. I think he was a little too eager to go forward, which is why our midfield was virtually non-existent, but good ideas in build-up, for sure. So we keep going forward. We get another scenario where Dom is passing the ball back. We get it to Curtis, because again, it's nice to have someone like Curtis because he'll naturally drift into these back positions anyway, and we get the ball distributed out to Milos Kerkez. Milos Kerkez finds Florian Wirtz, who again is a very arrogant ball player. He immediately lays it off for Kerkez again to drive. Kerkez has a lot of great options. He could go for Ekatike, Mo, Frimpong. Once he's driving in space, keeps driving. He, of course, now is Cody Gakpo. This is a pretty easy pass. A harder one that he could do, too. Could lay it off directly to Ekatike, back to Wirtz. Maybe a crazy whipped ball onto Mo. A lot of great options. I like the underlapping run of our fullback. He gets it to Cody. Cody lets Kerkez run beyond. He finds Flo again. Flo finds Hugo because it's just the easiest pass to make. Hugo could lay it off this way, but naturally his body shape's going to lean him to pass it inside. So that's what he does, passes it back to Florian Wirtz, and it ends up just getting in fully stopped and clogged by Palace. But a lot of good ideas again, like there's a potential outball to Milos Kerkez, who we know against Newcastle in that one game is able to shoot and score. Jeremy Frimpong is isolated on the outside. We have our pivot on the outside, which is great because it allows us to once again have that 2-2-6 in the end with both of our fullbacks on the outside, our attackers all here, our 2 here, and our other 2 back. So definitely some good ideas, and definitely something that we're seeing more and more. I love continuity in Slot's team. And we can easily see an example of that final third thing here. Frimpong's here. We have Mo inside. Cody's movement is still very interesting to me because you could easily see the likes of an Alexander Isak instead of Cody in those positions. But we got something like this in the final third. Maybe all of these guys sort of in the box. Congested. Our pivot here. Our back line a little further back. 3-2-6. Sorry, 2-2-6. Another great counter-attacking scenario. Cody in his left wing-back position progresses the ball from deep, which ideally, he should be able to do more. He gets the ball out to Curtis Jones. Curtis gets it to Jeremy. They do a 1-2. Ball ends up getting knocked along to Cody Gakpo, who continued his run, who is going to look to ping it back to Ekatike in space. That's the benefit of having a tall winger, and again, how I could see us utilizing Ekatike and Isak together. Knocks the ball back to Hugo Ekatike. Ekatike drives forward. He has a lot of really great options. He has a potential for a reverse ball into Cody Gakpo, direct into Florian Wirtz, direct into Mo Salah. You could even just turn around and pass it back. He goes direct for Mo Salah. Mo attempts to pass it across and fails, but again, a great idea. And you could easily see, once again, how we're maybe planning for either Isak or even Barcola, depending on how we're going to utilize these players. I could kind of see how you could play Isak or Ekatike left wing, although I'd still prefer Barcola in that position. Another progression scenario. Florian Wirtz gets the ball forward. Mo lays it off to Dom, who is in a position that I would like to see a left winger in. Maybe he could play it. One of the reasons I was thinking that in my earlier analysis. Dom gets in a good position, gets the ball to Cody Gakpo, who has a lot of bodies ahead of him, can't really shoot, and the entire sequence breaks down. So I think that's it for clips analysis. I don't really think I need to analyze the goals, but I do want to discuss why they sort of happened. So let's look back at the pitch. A couple of reasons that this midfield doesn't work and why it's a big problem is effectively because of how Dom wants to play when he's in the pivot is one reason. Dom is very good at covering ground, but his movement's not intelligent and he kind of moves too far forward at times. He's going to get caught out, which means Jones has to play in midfield by himself. Jeremy, of course, is tracking back. Kirkez is tracking back. You get a rest defense of just these three. It forces one of the center backs to commit to press onto a player. So if they have an elite ball player like Wharton on the ball, Verge has to move in. And if Verge moves in, Kirkez has to move back. There's this gap. Ibu could move over, but then there's this gap. Jones could cover. It becomes really difficult. Jones isn't great at tracking runners in his blind spot, so that's how you get the Ismail Assar goal. It's very difficult to defend with only 3 players back. You want 4. If we had Mac and Grab in the pivot, or you had McAllister in general, you had somebody who's more intelligent at covering ground, it would help in a lot of these situations. The issue is that we don't have any true 6 profile, and that's the problem you're going to get with a double pivot of 8s. It's really fun in attack, but it becomes really problematic in defense. I think you need a Wharton, a Baliba, a Chouameni, a Kamavinga. You need a player like this in the pivot in order to avoid some of these problems. I think our use of Milos Kerkez is a little bit idiotic. Realistically, you want Kerkez, like Frimpong, to be a glorified winger, and we're kind of restricting him to a build-up role, which, yes, he did at AZ Alkmaar, but is that his best position? No, definitely not. And if you wanted to play a player like this, you would want to have someone like a Lukeba, a Jarell Hatto, or a Piero Nkapie. So the fact that we've used Kerkez here suggests to me that maybe this isn't what Slot really wants to do, and he does want a 6 who can split the center backs, but we just don't have a 6 of that profile, which is why Kerkez is staying further back. And I know this is mimicking the Tavernier Barisic role, but realistically, Kerkez doesn't make a whole lot of sense against teams like Palace in these positions. And I think realistically, Slot should have gone for somebody like Dom left wing to help out in these wide positions, because Cody wasn't necessarily the best. He put in a good shift for playing as this makeshift left wing back, but realistically it should have been Dom out there with maybe McAllister starting with the intention of bringing Trey and Yoni or somebody to replace him later on. I know the situation with Gravenberch made it difficult because he is having a child, but still, I think there should have been some tweaking there. I also think forcing Mo to play inside is not what you want to do. You want to give Mo the liberty to drift outside and come inside. When Mo is forced to play inside, he needs to be your target man. He needs to be the guy who you send the ball to. He's the focal point. And when you have Hugo Ekitike, that's not going to happen. So it leaves Mo pretty isolated from doing pretty much anything meaningful, which is why he didn't have a lot of touches. I think realistically, you got to have this, which is why I think the dynamic with Bradley made a bit more sense, but it could easily make sense with Frimpong too if you just flip the roles a little bit. I know Frimpong's less comfortable in the middle of the park, but realistically, there was a lot of space out on this side because the pivot kind of drifts to the left, so... And since we're doing most of our play on the left-hand side anyway, I don't really see an issue with playing Frimpong and Salah here, considering that Frimpong's probably only going to have like one player on him, and Salah would be completely isolated. I do like this potential for rotation here. I think if Isak was here, you'd see scenarios where he's at left wing, this is your like striker, that he's in behind, Ekitike could be here with Verts, Isak, Verts here. And this isn't to say that this wouldn't work with Barcola. This would even work with Bradley Barcola. He can play as a false 9 and he can play as a left winger. He could play in this role too, albeit a bit worse. But I see how either could work in this team. It just depends on what zone they'd be more effective in. You'd want Barcola here. You'd want Isak here. But overall, I do see the ideas now, and I'm less skeptical about, the problem that I might have thought of before of playing Isak and Ekitike together. You could easily do it in this shape. But midfield is definitely an issue for me. I think our defensive structure is more of a problem for me than our defenders. I obviously do think we still need to sign the likes of a Leone or a Gehi, but I think our structure is way more important right now. We need to figure out how to keep Frimpong further back more, how to keep this strong 6 players back when we're getting countered on. We need to hold the ball better. We need to take our chances better. It'll be very important in this Bournemouth game to see how Slot addresses these issues, what tweaks are made. I'm very excited for that game because there are definitely a lot of problems in our current build-up and our defensive structure. But I have rambled for a really long time now, so that is it for this video. If you liked the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm going to have a video out on Bournemouth tomorrow, like a pre-match analysis. I'll also have a video predicting the entire Premier League table for the end of the season. I'll probably have a second video of that around the end of the transfer window, and then maybe one after the end of the winter transfer window. But yeah, I'm just going to be doing some stuff like that. But yeah, that's it. And as always, thanks for watching.